If you're over 30 and scared that you may not find love, then let me share with you how I went from single at 33 to married at 35. So the first thing I had to do was I had to identify my block. What was it that kept blocking me from attracting real, committed, consistent love? And instead kept me in the cycle of pursuing guys that weren't really interested. And once I understood that, honestly, it got easy because number two then was to cut the no more entertaining men that met these old behavior patterns of mine, meaning they made me anxious and they felt very uncertain about the relationship. And instead, I had to commit to myself 100% to only pursue men that were the opposite.
Okay, so it's funny because I can actually very much resonate with her story as far as my own dating journey in getting to a certain place in my life where I had to reckon with what I felt like was a deterrent to me experiencing the relationship success that I wanted. And I've often shared this story before, but I can share it again real quick. How I remember it was a friend of mine who saw me at the gym, and she came up to me and she was like, "Why are you looking so mean?" It was a white girl. She's like, "Girl, you look so mean at the gym. Like, I would not want to approach you if I was a single man." And I was shocked. Honestly, I was very shocked. But that one comment really kind of took me down the path of starting to unpack just honestly certain things about myself, beliefs that I had about myself, maybe certain fears, certain mindsets. And what I started to notice was that when I was attracted to a guy or want a guy that I found attractive or whatever, that I would like, it was weird. It was like some like psychological defense mechanism, but it was almost like I would put walls up. I would go the other way. I would look very like serious. Like I would become more standoffish if I found someone that I thought was attractive. So I was like literally doing the exact opposite of what I wanted to do. It was like total definition of self-sabotage. And, along with other things, maybe like fears, intimacy, or, fears this person doesn't like you, rejection, like all these different things. And so I actually had to start to come to grips with the things in myself that actually might be propelling me from having relationships. And that to me really made a huge difference because it's like, I didn't change my appearance. I didn't like drastically change what I was wearing or how I presented myself or whatever. But once I started to really address like some of those psychological issues that were going on and some of those fears or whatever, then I all of a sudden found it a lot easier for me to get more interest. And so I can identify with her being like, identifying those blocks. And many different people have blocks. For some, it could be psychological. For some, it could be spiritual. Some, it could be fear-related anxiety. For some, it could be past trauma, fear of being brokenhearted. For some people, it could be all kinds of different things. But those blocks, they really did make a difference because we give off an aura to guys, right? Whether or not we are open, whether or not we are closed. And of course, you don't want just every single guy to approach you. But I'm just saying, like, in general, it's just good to know, like, I think men can generally sense if you're open, if you are available, or if you are non-available, right? So, I can identify with that for sure.
So if I was writing essays in my notes app about this person, it meant he wasn't for me. And number three was probably the most important one for me, which is that I had to turn off all the outside noise.
Let me say this real quick. Another thing that I noticed. So around that time when I was starting to get honest with myself, what I started to notice too was how I would oftentimes find myself in a lot of like unclear relationships with guys. Not really dating them, not interested in dating them, but I would have guy friends. We just kind of hang out or whatever. And like I said, I really was not the person who was like sleeping around or having casual sex or whatever. Like that was never me. But I found that I would just have like guy friends. Then it got to a point in my life where I'm like, well, what's the purpose of having guy friend? Like, what's the purpose of this? Like, if I want to be in a relationship, if I want to be married, is this guy someone that I potentially see as marriage material? Because if not, unless he's clearly associated with something, unless you're associated with like a job, I have to work with you, unless you're maybe associated with my church and maybe we are involved in some ministry in some capacity or something like that, unless there's like a clearly defined purpose, I don't need to just be having random guy friends that I hang out with, that I emotionally bleed on, that I talk to when I'm having different feelings, like do all the things that I would actually want a boyfriend and potential husband to be. I don't need to use them for that because now it's like they're taking up wasted space. right? Or they're taking up, really not wasting space, they're taking up valuable space. And so I can find around that time I had to start to actually then look at the relationships that I had and acknowledge in myself when I had guy friendships that I was in some way using to get a boyfriend need or husband need met, but not doing it the right way, right? And for me, it was more emotional, and it was more like time spent and more just the idea of having male company than it actually was me liking that particular person. But then I started to realize, well, that's not right. That's not right for me. That's not right for them. And I have to be very clear in what I want. And so after that, I started to get a lot more clear about guys. And it's like, I'm just not hanging out with just randomly. We're not just like kicking it. Cause I'm like, we're not 12. Okay. Like you get to where you're grown. You're like, if you're grown, and you want to be married, like I'm not gonna sit here and kick it with you. Like we're on the playground. Like we are full grown folks over here. I'm trying to get married. And so I don't want to also come off to someone who might be a potential match to me, that I'm not one that always has guys around, because I can look funky too. So that's another thing that I had to like start to acknowledge in this journey of mine. Okay, let's see what else you got to say.
Meaning I needed to take a social media fast and make sure that I wasn't listening to everybody and all their opinions on the internet, but that I was tuned in to only God and my intuition. And that's it. Those were the 3 things I did to go from single at 33 to married at 35. I hope it helps someone. If you're over 30.
Okay, simple stuff. It's very simple stuff. But you know what I really appreciate about her? Super simple, nothing crazy, nothing earth-shattering, but what it required? Introspection. But it required deep honesty, even painful honesty, and then a willingness to change. Introspection, deep honesty, even to the point of it being painful, and then a willingness to change. Notice the changes, they weren't necessarily anything dramatic. She didn't say I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars and moved across country and changed the color of my hair and bleached my skin and got BBL. Like it wasn't anything like that. She was honest. She positioned herself. She leaned into her relationship with God and then listened to what he was telling her and listened to the guidance that she was getting. Like super simple stuff. Sometimes it's like we can get in the way of the things that we actually want. And I know that can be hard for some ladies to hear. It can be traumatizing. It can be frustrating. And I don't want to minimize the frustration that can happen when it seems like a person is caught in a continual cycle of broken relationships. But I think the sooner we are able to reckon with the ways that we might be actually coming against our own self and the ways that we might actually be standing in the way of what God has for us, the sooner we can recognize that, and the sooner we can get rid of those barriers and blockages and actually receive what God has been trying to give us the whole time. And so, I do believe, timing is perfect. Sometimes for a person, they're not doing really anything wrong. It's just not their time yet. I do believe that can happen. But I think it's always open. It's always a good idea to be open to guidance and open to guidance and correction. It's always good to minimize voices when you get to a certain point and you just don't know what to do. I'm like, always first and foremost, listen to God, listen to what he is saying to, ask for guidance, ask for wisdom, and he will show you. Because God actually wants to help us in every aspect of our life. He wants to be there to guide us in some of the most smallest, insignificant ways, but we have to allow him to do it. And sometimes some of us, we have to feel like we fail, or we have to come to the end of ourselves until we are willing to actually ask God for help and get his guidance. So I loved what she said. I would just add that little piece there. And yeah, it was good stuff. Anyways, guys, what do you think? Do you agree or do you disagree? Also, be sure to check me out on The Sacred Life, where I talk a lot more about my spiritual life and just what it means to live every single day as a Christ follower. You can follow me there. And also be sure to become a channel member. You can do so for as little as $4.99, where you get access to other exclusive content. And you can find me on Patreon, where we do book reviews and other content there you just simply will not find anywhere else. Thank you so much for listening if you've gotten this far, and we'll talk later. Bye.